Anthony uses a lot of meaning which he puts into his stories, and there are layers of meaning both in the backgrounds and also in the stories themselves. Now, Into the Forest to me seems to be a book in which this happens extraordinarily, and I really wanted to ask him, where does this interest in fairy tales come from? Because I don't know if any of you are familiar with this book, but it has a boy who is going to visit his grandma, and in the story he goes through a fairy tale landscape. But in that landscape, the fairy tale characters come and speak to the boy. Here you have them speaking to him, Hansel and Gretel. But you also have layers of meaning in the background where there's a lot of references to other fairy tales. And so I really wanted to ask him what it is about the fairy tale tradition that you constantly go back to it and want to explore and so on.
The books that I remember from being a child weren't picture books. I don't actually remember any picture books at all. We had sort of comic annuals. Alice in Wonderland was a strong memory. And fairy tales, my parents read as fairy tales, and so they've always been part of my culture, part of my psychological makeup, I suppose. They're still as relevant today as they were 200 years ago. And all the three of these books have actually started, in every case, from me trying to make a book of fairy tales. That one day I still intend to make, a collection of my favourite fairy tales, and I'm still not quite, I don't quite feel ready to do it. And on each occasion, one of these books has come from somewhere. In the case of Into the Forest, this all came about because I went to a writer's retreat with an idea for a book, and I was supposed to be there for 10 days, and the idea was we'd all have our separate rooms, be working on our books during the day, and then at night we'd gather around in the evening and talk about what we'd been working on. And the very first morning I decided that the idea that I'd gone away with was absolutely useless. It would never ever work as a picture book. And I thought, what on earth can I do? How can I stay here for another 9.5 days, and what am I going to work on? So I went for a walk in the forest, and it was a beautiful forest. It had snowed, and it took me back to something that happened to me when I was a child. The idea of walking in the snow, trying to find my grandparents, and it sparked off this idea, which is an idea that I had before, because Into the Forest comes from a story called Where Are You, Dad? And Where Are You, Dad? Turned into the tunnel. I don't know how many, 15, 20 years ago, I don't know. So in a way I'm revisiting the source of the tunnel. And that's really where the inspiration came from. The two episodes, one me as a little boy going off to try and find my grandparents in the snow, getting lost, getting frightened, eventually finding my dad when I got to my grandparents' house, and also the idea of trying to do a book of fairy tales. So by the time I came to do Into the Forest, I was steeped in fairy tales. I've been looking at fairy tales, I've been thinking of fairy tales I could use in the book, and the story came out of panic, really.